Okay, so it's 10:01. It's open hours time, so let's get started. This week we have Satyam, the inimitable Satyam, is here to go through his MakeNode extension. This is a gallery module currently. It's some work that he's put quite a bit of time and certainly a lot of writing into. He has 2 blog posts now up on YUI blog about this, and this is a really interesting extension, and it does an awful lot. And the things that it aims to do, now Satyam, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong here, but it aims to simplify some of the common patterns that people have to go through manually today when building out widgets. So if you find yourself typing these same things over and over again, then this might be a really good solution for you for building out your widgets. So as we get started here, a little programming note about YUI Conf is in November 1st through the 4th. And that is a Tuesday through Friday. We're going to be doing some training sessions on the 1st and 2nd, and then the conference itself and the presentations are going to be on the 3rd and the 4th. And we are taking submissions for talks right now. If you have an idea that you want to share, an experience you want to share, you've got some just really cool thing, then email it to us, and I think that the talking slots are 45 minutes, and there's actually details on YUI blog. There's a call for proposals on YUI blog, so you can visit YUI blog, and that gives the details there. We have 341 PR is scheduled for the last week of September or the first week of October, thereabouts. I think we can say last week of or first week of October. We'll see if we can pull it into the last week of September, but that's the plan. And let's see. Otherwise, Eric, do you have any programming notes that you want to say before we get started?
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty. So, Eric, were you introduced to the MakeNode extension through the blog article, or did you learn about it some other way?
Yeah, I think. Well, I read the first blog article, and also in IRC too. Satyam mentioned some of the stuff he was doing initially with the templating aspects of it, and that was where I was first introduced.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and so there was. Yeah, I guess we'll go into some details about the templating stuff. So, Satyam, I guess why don't you get us started with a little history of your experiences that led you to build the extension?
Yeah, the extension originally was mostly something to exploit substitute, the long form of substitute, not the one under language. That has a nice third argument in the call, which is a function that will receive the data to be replaced and can do pretty cool stuff, which I used in the first article, this one here, a recipe for a YUI 3 application. And so I call that function MakeNode because from a template, what it did was return a node, which usually you would insert into the content box. Then talking about that, in the IRC channel and looking for code here and there, I started adding things, and though the name remained MakeNode, as if that was the only thing it does, it got plenty of other things which supplement Widget. Hopefully makes it easy to write a code.
I don't have any audio coming in from you, Satyam.
Is it?
There we go. It's back. There was some static there, and then you dropped.
Okay. Oh, okay. So originally, the first article, the first version, started getting comments, and those.
Yeah, you dropped off again, Satyam.
Okay. I'm holding the mic on my mouth right now. I don't know. Okay. So let's go to see what's there. This page, you can have it here. It contains all the links, everything I'm going to talk about. Well, the first thing you notice if you go to the API docs is that you don't see anything. And this is part of an interesting discovery, is that if you're going to do a tool for other developers to do their thing, to do their library, make it all protected. So that's why initially, if you go to this page, you will see nothing, and it says enable protected, because all these methods and properties are not meant to be seen by the final user of the widget, but for the guy who does the widgets. Okay, is it better this way? This is one of.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a train station, but I can hear you okay.
Okay. Well, now I'm using the one on the laptop. The other one doesn't. Let's try again.
Let's try that. It sounds a little more reliable.
Okay. So. Actually, I asked about this. It occurred to me: should I make them public? I mean, why would the guy using the final widget done with this extension? Why would he care about, what was used in doing the widget? And so. They said, yeah, make them protected, so basically you don't see anything. And a weird thing about this is that it really has very few methods. Most of them are properties. So basically, it's more a declarative thing than a real procedural kind of extension. The idea is standardizing many things that you do often and often again, and sometimes you don't even know how to do it. There's several things that Widget can do for you that few people know about because it's well hidden in the code. And it also has too many options sometimes, like, for example, when you change an attribute, where are you supposed to reflect, how are you supposed to reflect that on the user interface? Like, are you going to put a setter on the attribute? Are you going to respond to an after event? Are you going to call sync UI every time you change anything and refresh the whole thing over and over and again? Well, the thing is, Widget already has a mechanism to do that. Since it's private and it's not very well known, few people know it's there. And the correct answer for most cases is you do it in the after event in response to the change of in the value of the attribute.
Yeah, that's actually pretty important. And I'm glad you point that out. It is a common mistake that to add side effect logic into a setter, but side effects should always be the result of after subscriptions, so after change event subscriptions. So.
Correct. So this is basically. If you do it that way, the effect can be prevented, can be stopped, can be propagated or not. You can do things in the middle and manage it somehow, and avoid and avoid the thing with Sync UI that refreshes the whole screen, the whole component every time you call it. So let's start with how you usually start with this. Basically, you start declaring the class names you're going to use. For example, this is actual code. You would usually declare the class names as an array of strings. Some of them are constants declared elsewhere. Some I don't use it anywhere else, so I just put the string over there. Some are calculated on the spot, but basically you declare the class names. And these strings, I usually call them class name keys or something like that. I mean, I developed that while writing the article for the YUI blog because I had to give them some name. Well, the thing is that I usually use these names in the rest of the extension to locate things, to refer to things that get these class names. So they are a handy way to refer to those items. So these are important names, and the ones that I use constants is because I'm going to use them over and over and again. So here you have an actual widget, which is derived from Anthony Pickens' button, but redone for using MakeNode. Another example is for the accordion. Here I'm using I'm using all constants. And what is it that happens with this? Well, first of all, they are going to be saved in a property called class names, which is private. You can. Well, no, actually it's protected. Well, anyway, it's just for the API docs. But it's a hash that have those class name keys as the keys to the array, and the actual name of the class name as its value. So for say input, you would have whatever the class name was for say the button. It would be YUI3 dash button dash button again, probably. I mean, what? For this one, it would be YUI3 dash button dash label. All lowercase, all with hyphens in between. That is what normally get class names would do for you.
Which is also a good point that often is missed, that when you are generating class names or you're building out a widget that you want to stamp some DOM elements with class names, it's best for reusability, so it can be shared on the CDN, on the gallery, to not use generic class names in a markup template such as pressed. You want to actually give that class name something that identifies it a little more specifically to your YUI component, so you don't run aground of having a more generic class name such as pressed in another implementation that some other person that you don't know is using your gallery module, but if you're drawing DOM that has a class name of pressed on it, for example, they could also be using a generic class name pressed in their markup, that now your style, the style that is coming along with your widget, will be running afoul of their CSS. So if you're creating class names to use in your DOM, then it's best to use the YUI3 dash, whatever your widget name is, dash pressed in this case, so that you don't run into collisions with implementation classes. And the method that Satyam is using or Satyam is referring to, is the get class names or get class name method, which exists on Widget and is also a standalone static method off of y.classNameManager. And so this actually, what this does, Satyam, if I'm correct, is it takes this array and it passes those names into get class name from the widget itself during the instantiation phase, so that it generates the safer class names for you.
Correct. And what get class names does is it starts with the YUI3, then it uses the name, the one I'm highlighting here, which is the first argument to y.base.create, and then whatever you put there in the class names array, one for each. Unfortunately, class names, when you do progressive enhancement, you would usually ask your markup, your original markup, to have the class names that will go in the final widget. I mean, you often do that because even if you don't have JavaScript enabled, your CSS files will load and will affect the markup on the screen. So it is often the case that you would use those class names to locate the elements you're parsing from the markup to be enhanced. Unfortunately, class names is not available by the time the functions in HTML parser are going to be processed. Sorry, I can't do anything about that. Another difference with the regular way that get class names works is that
I'm just writing.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, okay. Well, okay. So the class names are built one for each class. It means that if you are inheriting from, you're creating an original, a base component based on Widget and MakeNode, and then you're inheriting from that one. For example, in this case, which is part of the test suite for MakeNode, I have one MakeNode class which does very little except render itself, and it has a couple of class names called input and form, and then it has a template, which is the one that actually creates the markup. We'll see that later on. And I have a child one called MakeNode test child. So you see the names are different in one on the other. And what MakeNode does is, for each of those, it will create the name based on the class it was declared in. So for the classes declared in the parent class, it will use MakeNode test. For the class declared on the child class, it will use the name of the child. So what is the advantage of this? If you see the CSS class of button, if I didn't do that, what usually get class names the method available through Widget is it takes the name of that particular instance of the class, that particular child. So if the inheritance chain goes a long way, you have to repeat your class name selectors over and over with the names of everything. For example, button toggle inherits from button. So I had to have button icon none, and I have to have button toggle icon none, which is, too much. So you can see here the ones in red means everything, all the ones of the child got deleted because the class names will be generated with the prefix, with the class name of the class it was declared in. So even button toggle will have a YUI3 button icon, none or whatever, as its class name. You don't have to repeat it yourself. The other way to get around this, which is not good, is you cheated the system, and in toggle, instead of calling it the button toggle, you would call it button, and cheat class names and give both classes the same name.
Yeah,
so,
and then, now you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I know, but the original button, which I used for this, did exactly that to save on class name selectors. It had the same name for both, for the toggle and for the other one.
Right.
So yeah, it's a way of cheating the system. Well, with MakeNode, you don't need to cheat the system because it will create fixed class names. Whatever the class name is declared, that's the name it's going to get.
There is also the chance that when those class names are generated also for attaching behavior to. So if you have two different widgets that are using the same name, then depending upon the logic that's going on inside of your widget's bind UI, for example, or even in the other logic inside of your widget, if it's using getClassName to fetch something to do like a y.all this.getClassName foo, and you have a widget nested inside that happens to be using the same uppercase name property, then you're going to get some of the elements from that child widget. So it is important to use unique names in your different widgets, so you can start running into real problems that way.
Correct. Yep. So I already showed a template, and let me show you what you do with that. Okay, the template, it's a static property. Usually it's called underscore template, all uppercase. It's a static. All these properties are static. They go along attributes and HTML parser. There's just one copy for the whole thing. Actually, the file doesn't contain any template. That's why this one here, you're not going to find it anywhere because it's up to you to create it. You are not required to call it template, but this is a default name. It will look if you it will look for if you don't pass any name in the argument. So the template is a regular template that like the one you would use in y.lang.sub or y.substitute, except that it has several special placeholders which are listed right here, and that instead of being generic placeholders looking for everything of the same name in the object that is the second argument to substitute, they go into the widget itself, into that instance, and fetch specific things within the widget itself. For example, you can fetch attribute values, property values. You can call methods within the widget itself with an M. You can insert class names, which is what you would often use, using those keys you listed in the class names static property. So this is one case where you would already be using those class name keys, which are the strings you declared in this directory. Then you can insert strings coming from the strings attribute. One nice thing that Widget has, and a few people know about because I haven't seen it used in very many widgets over there in the gallery. Though the example for the spinner widget in the examples for widget does use it. Then there are a couple.
That S token is one of my favorites of this particular templating logic because it does hook into the internationalization strings really cleanly.
Yeah. I'm going. I'm going to mention that just a little bit later. Yeah, here.
But that's an example. What you're showing is an example of what one of your templates might look like.
Yeah, but well, let me finish with this list. Otherwise,
sure.
I get lost. So then the query mark, which works mostly like the operator, the query operator. That if this outbound evaluates to true, it will return this. Otherwise, it will return this one. And the one returns a singular expression or the expression for plural. Regarding the arguments, except for this, which are identifiers, when there's arguments like here or in this one or this one, all those arguments can have to be separated by white space, and if they are strings, they have to go within double quotes, null, true, false, or numbers. They don't need to be coded, and they will be turned into the proper types. So here is a few examples. This is the C placeholder, which which takes the class name declared as checkbox and inserts it there. Notice you have to put the quotes around the class because it will do a text replacement. If quotes are needed, you have to put them. This one will check if the value attribute is true-ish, it will return checked on this checkbox. Otherwise, it will return nothing. So this is a nice thing that also the substitute does. It's not my doing. It's there in substitute. It already does this. It can handle nested placeholders. So it will evaluate this. It will return whatever this evaluates to, and then it will evaluate the outer set of braces. In the case of the query mark or the one placeholder, it's the only thing it makes sense, because if this was a constant, if the first argument was a constant, it's constant. You cannot change anything. So you can do pretty fancy things like if a property called quantity is anything but 0, it will show that quantity. Otherwise, it will show none. Or even going further away, further, yeah, well, whatever. Pardon my English anyway. It can put the quantity and either set 0, the quantity, or none. And if there is a quantity, it could spell out the units in singular or plural. And all this goes nested one with the other, and it all works nice. So the nice thing about the S placeholder is that you can easily internationalize any widget without having to redefine it or do anything special about it. If you put the strings that are going to be seen by the user, or ARIA comments or read to or whatever by the user, you put it as a hash under the strings attribute. So the S placeholder, what it will hold is S input, S up, S down, and it will insert those texts. So here's where I haven't defined. These are taken straight away from the spinner example on the for widget. So these are where the strings are declared, and this is where they are used. I simply put S input, S up, S down, and they will be inserted into the markup, just as the classes are.
So
and the nice thing.
Sorry to interrupt, Satyam. One note about the strings attribute is that a recommended way to handle that is changed recently, but instead of having your strings attribute declared with a hash value directly, it's now preferred to use the attribute strings with a value function, and the value function then calls y.intel.getSpinner like you're doing right there. So it would look like attrs strings equals value function. I'm typing this out right now. Something like that.
Okay. Well, I wanted to do it a little more modest and just let know people that just by storing the strings under, the strings visible to the user under strings without putting any code, relying on internationalization, the widgets would become.
What you're doing different. Yeah, what you're doing works, certainly, yeah.
Because if you do it this way, the way you say, internationalization becomes a requirement for the widget, always.
That's true. Yeah.
And I don't want to. So at least if you put it there in English or whatever your native language is, you put it on strings, forget about internationalization, and your widget will be localizable.
But you would have to instantiate new spinner passing in the strings. In every widget you would have to be passing in the strings, calling y.intel. Whereas the value function approach... Right. Yeah. We can go over that. We can hash out the details in IRC, but there are two different approaches that both work. They're both pretty easy to do, and internationalization is very easy to do in YUI 3 one way or another. So, yeah, to your credit, it is often overlooked, especially in gallery modules, and it's really so easy that it needn't be overlooked, and it's set up in a way that's pretty easy to extend.
I think the main pain point with using the strings is just when you're trying to do your templating, which is what this is trying to adjust to, which
That's
I think
true.
is great.
Yeah, like I said, the S token is pretty awesome. I really like that.
Okay, and the other thing about the S token is that it's the only one that allows text within the string itself. So most of the you wouldn't want a set of braces in your text to be able to be replaced, because someone might insert code into some property, some attribute of the widget, and then you would be processing that and possibly injecting some JavaScript or something like that. So substitute is not going to do it, but for the S strings, it does. Supposedly you're going to use a new sound play safe, so it shouldn't be a problem. The nice thing about this is that if you're doing you're translating, you want to be able to place these placeholders anywhere where the syntax of the text must be in your language. You know, for example, in Spanish, you put the adjective after the noun, while in English you do the other way around. So if you concatenate things hard-coded, then you cannot translate it. It's a complete mess because you have to alter the order of things. Some languages, the currency sign goes before the number or the other way around. So you want to have to give the freedom to the translator to translate full phrases, including the placeholders. So that's why the ES will allow placeholders within the text.
Yeah, yeah, I've run into the same thing in some widget work that I've done as well too. But if you're doing internationalization, be mindful that that strings aren't always assembled in the same way in other languages.
So finally, MakeNode. What do you do with MakeNode? Here. This is how you use it, basically. In the render UI, you would call a MakeNode with no arguments, which will having it look for a static property called underscore template in all the inheritance chain, starting from the youngest one, the most recent one. Otherwise, you can provide a template here as a first argument, no problem. But if you don't, it will look for something called template. And you would normally append it to the content box, or in this case, where I don't have any content box, I appended it to the bounding box. And then you would call locate nodes, which I'm going to talk about it later. In accordion, I do basically the same thing, but in this case, I have I'm using two sections of a standard module, widget std, the standard module. So I'm inserting a part into the body and part into the header. You can see here that in the second one, the first one uses the default template. The second one uses, I explicitly asked for another template.
So the default is the default that this.MakeNode is equivalent to saying this.MakeNode my class dot underscore template.
Right, right. If you don't say anything, it will take this one, the one in template. Otherwise, you can explicitly say it. The other thing is that MakeNode uses substitute and it still takes the second argument to substitute. So, for example, if you're doing something composed like a series of radio buttons within a container, you can have first the set of radio buttons. You create a node for that. Then for each of the items within it, you append to that field set a node containing the radio buttons. And finally, you get them all into the content box. So, you know, you can do all those things. You figure out. That's easy. Well, then you go locate nodes, and I have already shown how to use it. Basically, what you do is simply, after you created the contents via MakeNode, you call locate nodes and ask them to locate whatever it finds. Locate nodes will use the class names. So you can call locate nodes without any arguments, and it will go through the class names and try to locate everything that got a class named in that array. If it doesn't find it, no problem, it doesn't complain. If it finds it, it will create a property. We're using this button. If in class names you had input, it will create underscore input node. If you have button, it will say underscore button node, and so on. So it will put an underscore before it and a node at the end. So you will have access to everything there. So why sometimes I don't use the the arguments, sometimes I do. And that's because there's a lot of class names here in the class here. There's a lot of class names here, and many of them are used at the same time. So if I say, just locate everything you can find, it will find the same thing, the same nodes, more than once, and with different names. And I don't care for that, because those are these ones, for example, are for decoration. They don't help me locate the bottom itself. So I tell it explicitly, I want this one, the label, and I want the icon, not the styling thing. So that's why here.
Satyam, your no dash label, what would it look for, and what property would it generate for that no dash label? Because of the dash.
It will generate this one. Dash label no.
So, but there was a class though that was no dash label, no dash label in your classes.
No, the other way around. First the dash, then the name, and node at the end.
Can you show your underscore class names real quick?
This one?
No, back in the actual class implementation, in the implementation code, where you were. Yeah, so go up to the static property, class name, static property.
Okay, here.
Yeah, there you go. So you
so
have,
I have all these classes.
Right, so the third class that you have there is no dash label, no dash label. So what property would that generate? I asked because it has the dash.
Well, it won't because I explicitly told it just to locate those two, label and icon. I don't care about the rest.
Right, but if you did actually ask for that one, if you did say locate nodes, no dash label,
it would put the dash in. Yeah, it would.
It would have the dash.
It would do underscore no dash a label, which would be an invalid identifier unless you code it. So that's another reason to explicitly tell it, do this too and forget about the rest.
Okay, so that's something. For implementers that are going to be using this extension, and they do want to have class names that include a dash in it. Then they need to be aware that the property that's going to be generated on that instance is going to include the dash, and it's going to follow the rules of uppercase first, and then the rest of that class name that's included. So it isn't turned into camel case like CSS properties are turned into camel case in JavaScript. It just does the modification of the first character of that class name, right?
Well, actually, that could be a patch I could do. I mean, turn everything that's invalid into an underscore, or simply drop it. Or change whatever comes after a dash into uppercase and forget about the dash.
That's true. Yeah. Why don't we? Yeah. No, I'll go ahead and put that feature request in for the module then, because that seems
actually
CSS pattern. So
the gallery, all the gallery buttons have forums for them and have back request available. So any ideas are welcome, and this could be one. Yeah, just to make proper identifiers of everything I find. So now refreshing the UI. This was one of the confusions we talked about in the beginning, that people don't know how to refresh the user interface based on changes on the attributes. Some people call sync UI every time anything changes. Some people do it on the attribute setter, and some people do it in the on or the after event. And nobody seems to agree about that, and the correct answer is usually in the after. So you can modify the arguments, you can prevent it from happening, you can do all sort of things. And actually, Widget already has an attribute called underscore UI underscore attributes, which already does this. And there's a whole list of attributes that widget already handles. And I've seen code where people are handling disabled or visible or even tab index on their own when it's actually already being handled for you by widget. So handling these UI attributes is a little messy because you have to concatenate on the already existing attributes for it to work properly. So to avoid that, you simply use my attributes to UI. And basically what it does is it contains two properties, sync and bind. Sync are the properties that are going to, the attributes that are going to be refreshed on the screen when sync UI is called. And bind is the widget is going to attach an event listener to the attribute change event, and it will also refresh the user interface based on that. And how it does, okay. How's it done? Well, it will expect that there will be a method called underscore UI set and the name of the attribute with the first letter in uppercase. So, for example, here in this one, I have all this in button. I have all these attributes which I want to have refreshed, and I have them listed both under bind and under sync. And where this will look is for methods using basically these names, like you see them here. UI set title, UI set default, UI set icon. Each of them will get the value, the new value of the attribute, and an extra argument. I'll talk about it a little later. And what you do is, whatever needs to be done, you do it there. So just one attribute at a time is changing. You don't change everything wholesale like by calling sync UI. You just set the icon, do whatever needs to be done to set the icon. Change the icon position, do whatever needs to be done just for that.
Yeah, that'll definitely.
There's a second argument
that'll definitely guarantee a snappier responsiveness to UI.
Absolutely, yes. There's a little issue with the user interface. For example, say you have an input box, and that input box is is reflected on an attribute called value. So you always want the value on the screen and the value on the widget all the time in sync to one another. The problem is that if you set the value, the attribute value, it's not an issue. It will go and refreshes the screen. If someone enters something in the screen, you want the value attribute updated. But if you get the value attribute updated, then it will trigger the listener for that attribute change. It will say, hey, someone changed the attribute. So it goes again, and it gets into a loop. So that's why when the change to the attribute comes from the screen, you usually set an extra configuration attribute in the third argument to the set method called SRC. And it has to be SRC. It cannot be source, just SRC, and set it to whatever. And whatever that is, check it before setting it, so you avoid the loop. Yeah, it's explained somewhere else. I'll start going a little faster now. So
we're running low on time. We do have there's more in the MakeNode extension What I was hoping to show, I don't remember if you actually covered this in the beginning, but an actual example of how MakeNode is included in the generation of a class, adding it into the array of class extensions.
Oh,
So when you're actually using the class extension, it requires that you use the y.base.create y.base.create construct and pass in the MakeNode extension. Where did it go? Pass in the MakeNode extension into the array of class extensions that shows up. Where'd you go? There you are.
yeah.
So you see the y.base.create, you pass in the name, and then the class, the superclass, and then comes this array of class extensions. And you just add y.MakeNode, and then all these static properties and things like that, that automatically happens for you. But so that's one of the big conveniences of using class extensions, is that it can augment the inherent behavior of the class, the class that you're adding it to, and it allows you to reuse those conveniences in any class that you're building. If you like working with that pattern, then you can use this extension. If you like working with a different pattern, then you can use a different extension, that sort of thing. So starting with just the foundational pieces of y.widget, then you can add in extensions that describe the patterns that you find most productive for you, or handle the extra niceties for you. This is a wonderful example of this a lot of really good patterns and a lot of good sugar for creating templates and dealing with internationalization and strings and working with class names. And Satyam, you haven't even covered the publishing of events or the handling of other things like that.
Well, the publish is very simple. It doesn't do much. You read the API docs. The events is taken from y.view, and what it does is it uses, for example, the class name keys to identify the element you're listening to, and saying what event you want to listen to. And there's a few. Usually, how you build it is a hash with identifiers identifying the object you're listening to and what is it you're listening to. You can either use simply the name of the event, or in a more elaborate way, an object describing the same type of event you're listening, and you can override the standard naming convention. If you don't say what function are you going to listen to, it will build the name usually after the name of the element and the name of the type of event you're listening to. Mm-hmm. Besides those keys taken from class names, there are a few other extra ones, which are a bounding box, the content box, a document, this all uppercase, and while. So, for example, this would be used to listen to value change events, for example. Y to events broadcast from elsewhere. And, of course, you would listen to bounding box and content box. Everything is... anyway, you're listening... it's using delegate to listen to everything within the bounding box. And also document, because, for example... if you're going to listen for mouse down and mouse up, you want to listen to mouse down on some button of yours, but you want to listen to the mouse up on the document because the user might have moved the cursor out, and you won't pick the mouse up within the same button because the cursor is elsewhere. So you usually listen to the mouse up on document. And publish, that's an easy one, and I won't mention that. And some issues that, we might talk about them later, doesn't need to be here. One thing that doesn't work is the first time, and actually it is initialized, it won't trigger the value change.
Hey,
I don't know
Satyam,
why. It doesn't do that.
you're well, okay. You're yeah. So you haven't been sharing your screen for a couple of minutes now. I thought you were going to launch it up again, but we're running.
I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry.
It just dropped off a couple of minutes ago. So if you've been going over your screen, then we missed that part. But everything that you're talking about is well documented in the blog articles and also on the link that you've included in the chat. So there's no, we're out of time for today to go into that detail now, but you don't have to go without that detail because it exists in the blog articles. And of course, Satyam is haunting the IRC channel and is available for questions until reasonable hours in Barcelona time.
Right.
And
the final gift is if you want to turn something into a widget child, this is the way to do it. It's a tip. Handy. Never mind. Okay, that's it.
What's that? Oh, interesting. Have to share that one in the gist or something like that.
Okay, the thing is, you can use buttons or groups of buttons. If you use group of buttons, you want to make them widget childs. But if you use them alone, you don't want to make them child because there's no kind they belong to. So this is a way to turn a widget into a child widget. Never mind.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I like that. We'll have to follow up on that.
Yeah, because buttons can be within a container or not. So when I insert the buttons into a button group, then I turn them child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so
that's it.
Now this is an interesting extension. I think that there's a mix of best practices in here. There's some really nice functionality for templating in here, and then you could probably actually take this class extension and break it into a few different class extensions for doing things like publishing and doing things like events and doing things like and break out the templating and have those be separate class extensions, or have a roll-up class extension or something like that, which adds all of them in. But this functionality is, the individual pieces of this functionality are all really nice. So I encourage everyone to go onto the blog if you haven't read through the articles. It's definitely worth a read, and read through the code, follow the links in the chat, and keep talking about this in the forums and in IRC. And we're going to call this a day for today, and we'll keep the conversation going elsewhere. So for Eric and Satyam and the rest of the crew, thanks everyone for calling in or connecting in, I guess. And we'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks a lot, Satyam. This
Thanks,
is
Satyam.
really great.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry about my English.
You always apologize about your English, but it's just fine.
Yeah.
Crack me up.